Hello and welcome.
Unmute.
I'm Jeff Spence from the Office of Alumni Relations at Thomas Jefferson University, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this evening's conversation. I encourage you throughout tonight's program to share any questions you have for our speakers in the Q&A button located at the bottom of your screen. If you don't see the button, just move your mouse and it should appear. We will try to get to as many questions as time allows, and we did get a handful of questions in advance. And now to begin our program, I am pleased to introduce Jefferson Baseball head coach and coordinator of community engagement for the Rams, Coach Pat Horvath, who will lead this evening's conversation, and our special guest, Major League Baseball insider Al Goldis from the textile class of 1968. Coach Horvath, take it away.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. So, hey, Al, how's it going down there in Florida?
It's going well, thank you. A little rain today, but still 78 degrees.
Oh, there we go. We had about 75 today, so we're not too bad up here.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So I guess to kick it off, why don't you start on how you got to textile? How'd you find your way to textile?
Very interesting case. Out of high school, I played at Bartram High School. I was a baseball, basketball, and soccer player. And afterward, Bucky Harris offered me a basketball scholarship to Philadelphia College of Textiles and Science. Actually, Herbie McGee and I, we played against each other, who, of course, is one of the, probably in the Hall of Fame, one of the greatest coaches in college basketball. He played at West Catholic. I played at Bartram. And when Bucky contacted me about coming here, they didn't have a baseball team. I said, Bucky, I want to be a major league player. Very difficult to play the big leagues when you don't play college baseball. So I went on to Temple on a baseball scholarship. And eventually I played and signed with the Reds, Cincinnati Reds. And fortunately, I played never in the during the season in the big leagues, but I was in the big league roster. And I played in the same outfield with Frank Robinson and Vada Pinson and so forth. And I played during that time, 1963, 64, excuse me. And it was the same year that Pete Rose broke in to the major leagues when he beat out Don Blasingame. And, but I played, and actually I was moving up, and then I hurt my arm throwing a football during the off season in a schoolyard Thanksgiving Day game. And a kid cut long, and I threw it, and I felt something give in my shoulder. It ended up, I tore a rotator cuff and labrum, which eventually they operated on, but playing today, I'd be back in 8 weeks. There, it cost my career. And afterward, I had scholarship offers from Villanova, Duke, and some of the other schools. And Bucky called me and said, look, I heard you hurt your arm, and we would like you to come back to the college. I said, I would love to come back, but I only had a year at Temple University. And then I signed. At that time, you could do that, because the draft didn't come until 1965. And this was in 62. So he said, well, you could come here as a student and we'll pay you, give you a scholarship, and you will get paid. And I said, and you will be the assistant soccer coach under Walt Chisowitz, which we were probably one of the top soccer teams in the country. Walt was an incredible coach. So I said, yes, I will do that. So I became the only student head coach in the history of the NCAA at Philadelphia College of Textiles and Science. And Jack McKinney was my assistant, who was the basketball coach, but they had to have a faculty member from an insurance standpoint, liability and all that. So that's how I got back to textile. And I went through marketing and management program. And I'll tell you, it was great, not only because of my involvement during the day I was a student, but then afterwards, I became the baseball coach. So it was a unique experience, but to this day, I still have friends that were players on our team, and it was incredible. People don't realize what was my experience at Philadelphia Textile and what happened to me afterward, and how that school helped me get to where I was today.
So when you became the baseball coach at Textile, right? Mm-hmm. So you're pretty young, and then it's first time ever coaching college athletics. What's the favorite story from when you first started coaching there?
That's very interesting, because there is a famous story. When I first, Tom Greavy was the head coach, and he was going to be retiring. And so they brought me in, and as my freshman year, we started fall baseball program, and we were playing up at Henry Avenue at Roxborough's Field. And we were there, and I'm watching the troops. I called my team the troops, and we watched them. And all of a sudden, the cab came driving up, and it stops right at the corner of the field at Henry Avenue. And this guy gets out of the cab driver, and he's coming over to the field. And I thought he was going to ask for directions or something. He gets up and he grabs a bat. And as he grabs the bat, he goes into the batting cage. Yeah. And he takes about 15 swings. And I'm like in total amazement. Who is this guy? What is this? What's going on here? And he gets in, takes his swings, drops the bat, drops his helmet, goes back into the cab, and drives off. And I turned to Mr. Greavy. I says, what the hell happened here? What is this? He goes, well, that's our fourth hitter for tomorrow's game, Don Molyneux. And Donnie was incredible. He was a good player, but he was a wonderful guy. And I said, wait, these things have to change here. We're going to start instituting some disciplines here. And so that was my experience having a cab driver. But the big question is, I still don't have the answer, Pat. I need your help. Did he keep the meter on? That's what I want to know. Did he keep the meter on? But that was my crazy experience during that my first year as coach, as working with Mr. Greavy.
Yeah. That'd be like the modern day Uber driver today.
That's right. That's
dropping in.
Exactly right.
One of my players driving Uber, stopping for practice, and then going back on the road. But
right.
So once you got done with Textile, where'd your life and your career move from there?
Well, I was very fortunate because of Textile. And what happened was I had 8 job offers because of the university. Right. And I could have gone anywhere. And I decided to go to work for a very big company in New York, J.P. Stevens Company. And really, they hired me because of my experience, not only in professional baseball as a former player, but because I had background from Philadelphia PCT&S. Mm-hmm. And they hired me, and I got into the industrial fiberglass department, working with reentry shields and things of that nature. And I think a lot of my players, George Braden, Don Molyneux, a lot of the guys, George Toter, they all worked at J.P. Stevens. And that's how I got to New York. And as I was there, I figured, I got to start staying in baseball. And I start coaching at St. John's University as the hitting coach on the weekends. And I did that, and then became the head coach at New York Tech. But what happened was, during that time, there was a player that had played for me in the Pendel League. And he was a priest, or studying to be a priest, at St. Charles Seminary. And I used to pick him up every Sunday. And he would come and pitch with me at Narberth, which was part of the Pendel League. And he was my 6th pitcher. We worked with him and all that. And when I moved to New York, I hadn't seen him, and I figured he became a priest. Well, I go to a game in New York when I was at St. John's scouting a catcher, played in the big leagues, John Valley. And I look through from the first base side, John was a right-hand hitter, and I see this guy on the other side. And I said, that looks like the guy that we used to work and play for me at Narberth. I go around, and it was Joe Mcelveen, who later became the general manager of the New York Mets. And we saw each other, we hugged each other, we talked for 3 hours. And he told me that he left the priesthood and he became a scout with the California Angels. And he asked me a question. How come I am not back in professional baseball? I said, I'm just trying to go back into the game. And he goes, I think I can get you the job. I'm leaving the Angels, who was owned by Gene Autry. And he said, I'm going to work with the Milwaukee Brewers with Harry Dalton. And he said, would you be interested? I said, absolutely. Well, Joe made the call, talked to the scouting director. And I got a call the following Tuesday, and they hired me. I got off the phone. My wife says, well, how much are they paying you? I figured, I never asked that question. Yeah. So I called him back, and he said, you're making $10,000 a year. He could have said nothing. I would have taken the job probably. Yeah. But that's how I got back into baseball. And I worked with Gene Autry, the singing cowboy, for 8 years. And I was the East Coast scouting supervisor. And my territory was from east of the Mississippi to the Atlantic Ocean, from Maine to Florida. We only had 6 scouts. So that was that's a big territory. It was good for frequent flyer mile.
Yeah, sure.
But being away from the family. So that's how I did that. I worked for, the Angels. And then I became, fortunately, one of the fellows that worked with me. We had played together with the Reds. Larry Hines became the general manager of the White Sox. And he offered me the job. And he was our national cross-checker with the Angels.
Okay.
And he offered me the job to come with him to the White Sox to become the direct assistant GM, director of scouting, and director of player development. And no one else had that job that did both jobs. And I took the job. And I went to Chicago, and we were there for about 5 years. Yeah. And Larry didn't get along with the owner too well. So, but, I was very loyal to him.
What year was that when you started with the White Sox?
85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90. And we had some pretty good drafts. We had the Jack McDowell, who was a Cy Young Award winner. We had Robin Ventura. We had Frank Thomas. We had a lot of guys that went to the big leagues. And fortunately, we had great scouting, and we had very good development, player development. And that's what it's all about, is evaluation, getting good people. This is what I always use. And I learned this at Textile. Get the right people on the bus, put them in the right seats, and let them do their job.
All right.
And you know what? And give them a direction tell the bus driver where to go and let them do their job. Yeah. And that's what I've always been my philosophy, based on some of my business courses with Mr. Solov and Zelikoff at Philadelphia Textile. And they helped me my career as I progressed.
Yeah.
So I was there for quite a while with the Angels, and then I became the vice president of the Cubs after that. When Larry Hines went to the Cubs, I became the VP of the Cubs. And that was great for about 5 years. We did that. And then I was fortunate that the Cubs wanted to go to they were in Arizona training. And what happened was that I live in Sarasota because that's where the White Sox trained.
All right.
And I wanted to stay at home, and I never moved. And then the Reds were going to move. I was helping them get the spring training facility in Sarasota because I had a lot of friends and a lot of people I know politically. And the Reds moved here. So Jim Bowden, the GM, says, why don't you join our team? You could stay home for instructional league, spring training. You'll be home 3-4 months a year more. I said, absolutely. So I worked for the Reds for 7 years. And then what I did, I got an opportunity because of my friendship with Fred Wilpon, the owner of the Mets. He called me up and asked me if he'd like me to be the assistant GM with the Mets. And I went and joined them until I retired. So I was very fortunate. I mean, really fortunate. But a lot of the principles that I used, both in development, scouting, were developed from my experiences with Bucky Harris, with Harvey McGee, and from the education at business school that I went to at Textile.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful for them because it had a tremendous influence for me.
No, it's good. Now, I wanted to get back to the White Sox because when you spoke with the baseball team at Jefferson last year, you brought up Frank Thomas, Hall of Famer, and then something about him in the minor leagues, and then he wasn't running hard, and you told him to bench Frank Thomas, right?
Well, what happened is we had no rules. We only had standards because when you have rules, people will find a way to break the rules.
Yeah, exactly.
But when you have standards, they will not break standards. So we had this is what the standards were. 1, be on time. 2, wear your uniform and respect the uniform and respect the game. Run every ball out 100%. And one more, I can't remember what it was, but give 100% at all times. When you hit a fly ball, you had to be between first and second when the ball was caught. If you did not adhere during the game, you would be taken out of the game. And I didn't care. We did it to Carlton Fisk when he came down and played at AAA games in spring training. So the question was discipline of the organization. And one of the keys to discipline is you must always discipline the star. If you don't discipline the star, then that sends the message. When you tell the best player, the Hall of Famer, the Frank Thomases, the Harold Baines, that what is the 24th player on the team thinking? This guy is disciplining the star. So they're all going to fall in line. Yeah. So what we did with Frank, the first at bat, I always made our first round picks play in the Gulf Coast League. They were talent-wise above the Gulf Coast. Philosophy was I wanted them to get the feeling of what it was like to play in Sarasota, Gulf Coast League, when it was 96 degrees with 6 people in the stands, hot weather. I wanted them to remember and never forget where they came from. Well, Frank's first at bat, he had a ground ball to shortstop. He ran like 75%, and I'm in the stands. Now, not only did I evaluate Frank, now I'm evaluating my manager, because baseball is much different than all other sports, because we have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 minor league clubs. NFL teams got one team. NBA have one team, basically, except for the D League. But what happens, I don't know what's happening in Vancouver. I have to trust my coaches. So I'm now watching and evaluating my manager after Frank did not run the ball out hard. Well, Eddie Peebley looked over and says, Frank, have a seat. This is the first at bat. We just gave him, I don't know how much money at the time, 150, 250,000. He took him right out of the game. First at bat, sat him on the bench, took him right out of the game. And after the game, so Eddie Peebley came over to me and said, do you want to be there when I talk to him? I said, I will be there, but I'm not going to say a word. I want to see how you handle it. He went over there and he asked Frank, why did I take you out of the game? He said, I don't know why you did. He said, did you give me 100%? It takes no talent to run the ball out hard. He says, no, I ran about 75%. That's why I took you out. He said, Coach, it'll never happen again. And it never did.
Yeah.
So he disciplined a star, and the rest of it was all over, because these other guys are not going to, if he's the star, what are they going to do?
Yeah, exactly. So that's a good story. I loved it when you told the team that last year, and I keep bringing it up every time I talk about you. The other thing too, since this is an alumni and we obviously have a lot of textile people on it, is there any good stories about Coach McGee? Like, didn't you say you beat him in basketball, or he couldn't score on you or something like that?
He won't admit to this, Coach McGee. Let me tell you something, point blank. Coach McGee was the best shooter that I could ever remember in high school. Him and Jimmy Lyman, when he was a West Catholic with Flavin, they were superb. I mean, Herbie, but he always took one step and took his jump shot, and he was deadly. And that's when, of course, he led the nation in scoring when he played for Bucky. Mm-hmm. So I always told him, when we Bartram, that's a big rivalry, Bartram and West Catholic, and we had a good team. We went to the playoffs that year too, and I covered Herbie, and Bobby Thornton covered Lynham. And I remember I held him to 4 points because he used to take that one dribble and I would overplay him to his right. Well, he still denied it all the time. And I said, okay, we'll go down to the Inquirer and let's take a look at the box score and see how many scored. So to this day, we go back and forth. You never held me to 4 points. Well, the God's truth is I did. Yeah. Sorry, Herbie, I did. But
it's official. It's official. You put it on Zoom, so it's official.
That's right. Now. It's official. It's official. But yeah. Herbie is one of the greatest coaches ever. And I come from a family of great. My uncle was Harry Lutwack, who coached at Temple. So I'm and Skippy Wilson at Temple was my coach when I played freshman ball. And I'm telling you, Herbie McGee, without question, is one of the greatest coaches ever to coach collegiate basketball. He was tremendous, really wonderful. We had a great time together, and thank God we had him and Walt Chisowitz. We had a hell of a staff. Mm-hmm. But Herbie was great player.
That's good. Yeah, he's a good guy. He's right across the hall from me in my office, so I get to see him all the time. Now he knows my name after 10 years, so that's a good.
Well, just overplay him to his right. When you talk to him, overplay him to his right. I'll never get around.
Yeah. All right. So what you did too, so you had all your years of baseball, scouting and stuff, and then you came out with a book, right? You want to talk about that?
I've written 2 books. Are You a Diamond in the Rough? And How to Make Pro Scouts Notice You. Why did I write the books I wrote and collaborated with Rick Wolf, who played for me in the Atlanta Collegiate League. I saw a lot of kids that were coming out of high school or college that weren't physically, emotionally, or mentally ready for professional baseball. And they were giving up good scholarships to good colleges. And where in college baseball, I mean, let's face it, the coaches nowadays, they're very fundamentally sound. They really train these kids, and they could go to a higher level. And so when they came, out, I saw these kids signing, and they just weren't ready emotionally to go away from home. It wasn't the physical side as much as it was the emotional side.
Right.
So I wrote the book mainly for parents, for coaches, for umpires, who are mentors or advisors to these young athletes to help give them the better base as to what their decision, because they're making the biggest decision of their lives. What college? Do I go to pro ball? Do I do this? Because one thing I have found from my experiences in pro ball is that if a kid started college a year or two, he's generally going to finish. If he gets released or if he goes on, he's going to finish. If you don't get started somewhere, you're going to have him. It's 4 years. You're going to go back, and many times you get married and so forth, and you just don't have the time. So that was the premise of the book, is to give direction and give a point of view of why I always believe you could go two ways: go to school and play ball. There's no reason why you can't do two things. And you just got to tell the scouts, this is what I'd like to do. Because the coaches today are very fun. They're good. They're fundamentally sound. And the kids can go, instead of going to rookie ball, the college kids, they could go to a good A league. So that saves them a year or two, of development. So that was the premise of the book. And right now I'm writing a third book we're dealing with I'm writing Vital's in the book, and we got Belichick. We got a lot of, how do you know whether you're hiring the creme de la creme, the best CEO, the best manager? And so we have a lot of business experiences, and we're writing it with two other guys that are in the business world. One guy is the VP of Nike. One guy is a professor at Stanford, determining what are the criteria that you look for in an individual. What are the physical, what are the emotional, what the intellectual qualities that you look for to avoid making mistakes. So we're working. So it's going to be good. It's going to be good.
That's good. Yeah. So, before we move into the questions and the answer section, because that's going to take a lot more of the time too, which is good. But, for me personally, I want to thank you for your support, because about 3 years ago, I think you just showed up at the baseball field. I think
I get lost around baseball fields. Yeah.
Yeah. You just showed up. I stopped, I went over and said, hey, can I help you? And found out that, hey, it's Al Goldis here. And then, so we kind of built that relationship, and you've been supporting the baseball program ever since. And then also you've been helping out. We had a player, you have a summer thing going on, summer college league, that I'll let you get into, but you actually got one of our players, Vince Barone, to go down there. But just besides the support that you're doing with the program, we want to thank you. But then also talk about the college summer league that you're starting.
Well, I want to talk about two things. One, the summer college league. And one of the things I wanted to do is get our players up from Jefferson to come down, because these are really, we have right now we have 12 teams. It's a college summer league supported by Major League Baseball. And it's kids that want to play high quality ball like the Cape Cod League. And this year we had Vince Barone, outstanding young man, engineering student, funny kid. It was just really, really fortunate to have him. And I'm looking forward to next year that we always have at least one or two players that are open-ended to come from Jefferson. And I think what it does, it also exposes them to Division I, some of the University of Texas or University of Oklahoma. We get kids from all over coming there. And it's a great college league. It's in Sarasota. We play in Bradenton. We use all major league facilities, and we have every staff member is a major league former coach or development person in the minor leagues. So the main thing is development and make the kid better. And we work with the coaches, whatever college, what do you need this kid to work on this summer? And we coordinate so we work together with the coaches. It's not, it's a team effort. But I really believe, one of the things to contribute to the school, I really would hope when I see a kid like Vince come down, that it just next year, we have one or two kids that want to come already to our program. So that helps the college and helps the university. And I think any of the former players, as they look back, you spend a lot of time in the classroom, but I want to tell you, the relationships that you form on a baseball field, that's why it's called a team. There's no I's in team. So when you have the team concept, is that you have some of the and I have them to this day, the George Bradens of the world, the Don Mullen, is that they're incredible relationships. And I would love to see more and more of our alumni support the baseball program. I don't care how much they give. It's $100 a year, $200, whatever they can afford, because I know one thing. I know you're doing a heck of a job there, because I see your kids and a discipline that Vince had, his relationships. I watched your team. You didn't even know I was watching you. when I came that day, right? You didn't know who I was.
No, I didn't know who you were at all.
I was very proud of the way the disciplines and the way your coaches worked.
Yeah.
The kids didn't loaf. None of them loaf. They worked hard. And I was very proud of the way you ran your organization. And I said, we got to get you more money to help these kids. No, I'm not. It's going to develop and it's going to make the university and to make these kids better. And that's the goal. So anyone out there listening, hey, instead of going to that dinner, send a couple bucks to Pat Horvath in the baseball program.
Yeah. And we got the Day of Giving coming up on Thursday. So that'd be a good time to send that money in.
Yes.
No, I appreciate it, Al.
And you know what? And I always believe, if you're going to talk, you got to walk the talk. So I did start a scholarship program, right, for the next 10 years. So, I'm very proud that it's going to be used, for some of your players that you'll determine who gets it.
No, I appreciate it. So now, can you go in a little bit more depth with what you do with the Major League Baseball? I know we talked about how your career started as a scout with the Angels and the White Sox and the Cubs and then the Mets, but can you just go dive in a little bit more with the Major League Baseball?
Yeah. Well, what happened is, it's funny. You see these teams that I work for. I said, I tell everybody, I said, the reason I work for all these teams, I couldn't hold a job. But actually, all these teams that I went to, there were better jobs and there were elevated jobs. But mainly what I was primarily interested in is how do you improve the value of each player? I learned a great lesson from one of the smartest and premier owners of baseball, to a dear friend of mine, Jerry Reinsdorf. And he always told me, he said, you never hire a person to do a job. You hire a person for the value that he brings to the job. And that's why I think college programs, when a kid has more value, he's more stable, he comes into your program, he's giving you more assets to come into your program, because there's the athletic trilogy is critical for it to be a major league player. You got to have physical tools to play in the big leagues. And you watch the World Series, those guys are talented guys. But you also have to have, you got to have a brain. You got to be able to learn and remember, and how you're going to beat your opponent intellectually. And also what kind of makeup when things don't go right. How do you get knocked to the ground? How are you going to come back in 2 losses in a row? How do you get off the canvas? So the emotional side is critical. I call it the athletic trilogy. So we looked at that. We did a lot of things with the White Sox that other teams didn't do at the time. Our nutritional program. We instituted, I know we had the best conditioning program because we had nobody get hurt one year. We had outstanding conditioning guys. And we had also language guys to teach the Latin players English. And we did a lot of things other teams didn't do, and they start copying us. But I think, you just be innovative with how do you make the product better? How do you make each individual? I don't know who's a major leaguer. They're going to tell me who's a major leaguer as they move up the ladder. But you have to have some of those physical tools. If you're a dumb baseball player, you could be smart intellectually, but you may be a dumb baseball player. You're not going to be a winning player.
Right.
So those are things that we have to look for. But right now, in professional ball, 2 years ago, I was asked by Fred Wilpon to come in and observe. Al Leiter, John Franco, and myself went into spring training just to evaluate, sit around, watch major leagues and watch the minor leagues. What has to be done? What can be improved? And there were a lot of things that needed to be improved. And you know what? They didn't improve them. And what happened, you just saw the other day, they fired the entire front office. That's because of reluctance and not being able or not willing to admit where their needs are and to change. You've got to change when things, if you're not doing something right, don't be afraid. Let's change. Let's make it better. And that was my whole premise. How do we increase the value of my staff, my coaches, my players, and myself? And it's, and that's one of the keys. I don't know if I answered your question, but but right now we're doing that. Right now, what I do is I actually have been named director of with Jeff Howard, the director of Haitian Olympic baseball development. And we have a lot of major league coaches on our staff now. And we're going to, for the first time, Haiti's right now in 2024, we're developing the Olympic team for Haiti. And of course, to play against the Dominican Republic, there may end up being a war between them. I don't know. But anyway, it's enjoyable. I love the camaraderie, the personalities, the people. The one thing we have to understand, and this is a major change in sport, is that analytics, we always use numbers. Numbers are good. They're pieces of information. However, don't ever get away from the fact that baseball is a game played by people and for people. You got to have the right people. You can't do it with numbers. Numbers don't swing bats. Okay. Numbers don't run bases. Numbers don't make great play. It's the player out there. You can give them the information. Okay. If they use that information, that's part of the toolbox, just like anything else that you would use. But right now, it's the human factor that we have to get back into the game. And unfortunately, I just did a personal study from 2000 to 2019. There has been an increase in Major League Baseball by 13,500 more strikeouts. That's not very entertaining for the fan to come and spend, and the tickets are expensive.
Yep.
And you go there and watch no action, no good.
Yep.
No good. And I think, what you're seeing now is teams being sold and all that. So again, we're trying to help innovate that and change and use the analytics, but don't forget the human factor.
Okay. All right. So that was good. You talked about what you're doing now, and it brought up analytics, which is going to be one of the questions. So you talked about the human factor. Now we go back to the World Series. You got the Rays, game 6, you got Snell on the mound. He's dealing. It's a must win for the Rays, but they pull him because of pitch count and analytics. But the thing is, the Rays used analytics all year to get to that point. But what's your feeling on that situation where the pitcher is obviously dealing, but they pull him because of the pitch count?
Okay. This is what I'm talking about, the human factor. That's right. The manager has the feeling of the players. He knows which guys are tough. See, I happen to know some of those guys, and I would not have brought in. I would never have taken out Snell. I don't care what numbers they're saying, what the numbers say. All I could tell you, and I told my wife this, as soon as they took him out of the game, I turned to her and said, the Dodgers are winning the World Series. Because as a coach, and when you're facing a pitcher that your guys just can't hit, and they can't hit him, how do I get this guy out of the game? Do we take more walks? How do we do to get this guy out of here? Well, the manager took him out. I'm not sure that he really wanted to take him out.
Yeah.
So the fact is, when he took him out, the guy just was intimidating with his stuff. So you got to get the instinct of the manager. The gut feel factor is critical. Sometimes you can't express it verbally. No, I know this guy's a tough guy. I didn't think the guy they brought in, was it Anderson they brought in?
I think so.
Yeah. And what it is, I didn't think he's a tough guy. I didn't think he was really a tough guy watching him play in the playoffs. So again, that's what I'm talking about, the human factor. Numbers can say things, but the human factor, the numbers can't tell you how tough a guy is.
Yeah, but you got organizations hiring managers just to do analytics. Like, the Phillies before Girardi, they hired a guy. He just basically, it's because of analytics. And
the Phillies had 21 guys. The Phillies had 21 guys, analytics. They built a new department across the street from the stadium for analytics. And I'll tell you something, they didn't make the playoffs, did they? Take a look at all the teams that were oriented, and I'm not downing analytics. We always looked at OPS and on-base percentage, the slugging percentage, and the 10% of guys of at-bats of how many walks you should get. Those are important things. But the fact is, are the players that you have capable of capitalizing when you give them those pieces of information?
Right.
So, see, I think when you go numbers and answer and get those answers, you're not going to win. You just can't win. It's not going to happen.
Because one of the questions that came in was, in your opinion, why hasn't the emphasis on analytics helped the Phillies? So the Phillies obviously emphasize analytics. Why hasn't it helped them, in your opinion? Besides,
my opinion is this: there's an attitude, okay, and I'm going to give you some inside input. This is only for Jefferson University alumni. I'm giving you inside input.
Breaking news.
When the manager was I'm not going to say who. I know this for a fact. When one of the managers was being considered to manage the Phillies before they selected Girardi. And by the way, Girardi's we had Girardi at a tryout camp from Northwestern in Chicago at the White Sox when he was coming out of college. So I know him way back then.
Right.
And what happened was when they had these analytic guys, and they were asking one of the managers, one of the questions from the analytic people that were in the interview was, how about if we make up your lineup for you? What's your feeling? And one of the managers said, you got the wrong guy here. You shouldn't have brought me in here. Yeah. Right. And I think Girardi also expresses that. He feels, it's good. You get information and that's it. I've been in rooms where the phone rings and they're telling the manager who to play. So it's, to me, that then don't hire a manager, just have computerize it. That's it. Yeah. But the human factor, he has to have a brain to analyze the numbers. Does it apply when you're facing, Snell? Darn well, these guys are not going to hit Snell.
Right.
So why should I take it? You're doing the other team a favor by taking him out. Mm-hmm. So again, nothing goes away. Who knows? Let me ask you this question, Coach.
All right.
You've had your players. If I asked you point blank to tell you the strengths and weaknesses of each one of your players, I'm sure, and I know you could tell me the strengths and weaknesses of your ball club.
Yeah.
So you have to make that decision right during a game, the 7th inning, the 8th inning, the 9th inning, which guy I should bring in. That's why you're getting paid to run the team.
Yeah.
You know that. What number can make that decision for you better than you?
Right. And for me, it's, hey, this guy's tough. I'll put him in this tough situation. Has nothing to do.
That's why a lot of guys come to this is one of the most difficult things as a major league evaluator. I've seen guys, Whitson played for San Diego, went to the Yankees. I see this guy, what's his name, pitching for the Mets now, a reliever, came from the Mariners, Diaz.
Right.
Can they handle New York? Can they handle the pressure situations? That's where the manager knows which guys are tough guys. They can handle anything. Goose Gossage can handle anything.
Yeah.
Didn't matter. But some guys can't. Some guys are setup guys. Some guys have to be in different roles because they don't necessarily, it's just they're not that makeup for those roles. That's where the manager comes in and learn. That's why you have spring training. That's why you have minor leagues. That's why you have the season for you, but the manager gets to know them.
All right. Now with the analytics, now you got like the draft. This past draft kind of was a little bit different because of COVID and everything, but also they're going off the Rapsodo numbers and hit track numbers and all this information. Now, as a former scout, how would a Frank Thomas would have stood with the Rapsodo numbers and stuff, like how they're scouting
Frank Thomas,
now?
I mean, it would have done, it doesn't matter. I mean, Frank Thomas, when I first saw Frank Thomas, I saw him at the University of Kentucky against Auburn, and Hal Beard was the coach. And I'll never forget this. I could tell you, I don't remember the pitcher's name for Kentucky, but number 18, I could tell you his number. He threw a slider on the outside part of the plate to Frank, first time up. And I had never seen Frank before. One of my scouts loved him so much. First pitch, slider outside. He hit the ball off the right center field wall. I thought it was going to go through the wall. And I said, that's my guy right here. I mean, this guy here, I mean, you just saw his presence, his strike zone awareness. But the fact is, with you got to look at the tools of the player. How do you win a baseball game? Baseball is very interesting because baseball and most sports come down to two things. In baseball, you must create angles and you create space. So if you get a guy like Frank Thomas, I was fortunate years ago, I drafted Bo Jackson with the Angels, but we didn't sign him. We offered him $450,000, but he was making more money at Auburn. And what happened was, why do you love guys like that? Because they combine power and speed. So where do you play him? If a guy has speed but he has no power, you can play the outfield in, play everyone in. And what happens? You're not going to hit the ball over your head. So therefore, it decreases the amount of space in the outfield, less chance of a hit, especially at the major league level. But if you have a guy like Bo, where are you going to play? You got to move back. So he creates more space. So he's going to be a better chance of getting more hits. So, to answer the question, I guess, You know, the analytics are good, Rapsodo, all that stuff. It just gives you pieces of information. But does it give it against what type of pitchers? What kind of, where are the location of the pitches that the guy hits? There's so many factors that come into play. But there's nothing that takes the place of the individual watching your eyes, watch how he handles the situation, no matter what. When I used to have a guy in Colorado who was one of my scouts, and he would tell me about a player and write it down and all this. And I said, it just sounds interesting. But when I went to see this guy had him right on. He was able to evaluate him. He was not able to literally put it down on paper, but he had the right player. He knew what he was looking at. So you have to know your people. Same thing as a manager, knowing the people. Right. So analytics, I would say this. It's going to be a decrease, even though all these young guys, and they're in the game. They are smart as could be, but they are so is what you call it. I'll tell you who's smart, and no one was smarter. How about Albert Einstein? Pretty smart guy. Yeah. Now, let me ask you this. Do I think he could run Jefferson's baseball team? Yeah. I would think that his IQ to run a baseball team would be a little bit less than physics. And that's what he, so the question is, there's 8 different types of geniuses. A sports guy and how he uses people are different than a guy maybe in music or in physics or in math. So it's a very difficult determination of when you're dealing with human performance. Yeah. And there's a lot that goes into it. We had very big psychological tests. The ESPN test, we had the 16 PF test to evaluate them. How do they perform under pressure? You know what? You don't know until it happens. Exactly. Until the bases are loaded. When I saw John Franco at the parade grounds in New York, this is telltale sign. How's he going to handle this? Bases loaded, no outs. You know what? This little 5'7" guy struck everyone out. He attacked. You don't think you want a guy like that on your team attacking a tough situation? Yeah. He may have gotten a hit, but he attacked. That told me something. Yeah. My eyes told me this guy's a tough son of a gun. Yeah. Yeah. And it's sad because I want Franco pitching for Jefferson.
Yeah, but it's sad because it seems like the trend is all about the analytics. That's what you see on Twitter, what you see on social media. That's what these kids are getting brought up into. Like, hey, I have to have my launch angle a certain way. I gotta be able to throw this. But
that's the way. Right. And the fact is, I'm going to tell you, 2 teams, just off the top of my head, lost the playoffs because of those particular circumstances. When the Atlanta Braves lost to the Dodgers, okay, in the last inning when the catcher got up for the Dodgers, right, there was a shift on. What did the catcher do? He hit a little ground ball with men on second and third to right field. Yeah. Right center field. And both runs scored. They were playing the shift to pull the guy. The guy saw, you know what? That's why the Dodgers were a good team. They could do a lot of things. And then Snell, again, analytics. Now, here's the question. We always hold scouts, coaches accountable, right? All the time on the field. That's why the Mets just fired all their front office. Here's the question. Who's holding the analytic people accountable? Who's holding them accountable for their mistakes? Hey, let's be fair to both sides. The fact is, you need numbers, but more importantly, you need the people. People, this is a people game, and don't ever get away from it.
Yeah. All right. So we got some questions rolling in here. So let's move. Let's see. We got some other ones. It says, do you think team sports academies are worth the investment like the Royals had?
You're talking about the Royals. I think the Royals Academy was genius. I believe that there are a lot of things. I live down here in Sarasota. And of course, we have IMG, which only costs $75,000 a year to go there. And they don't get too many guys drafted out of there. I think a lot of these, the thing that's really disappointing to me, and I'm going to get to the question totally, is I see a lot of these organizations making a lot of money on these kids. Okay. Travel ball and all this. And all they're doing is setting up kids to play in tournaments, which is good to play. But, I'm like astounded as to how much these kids are paying the parents, of how much they're really paying. You've got to get at bats. You cannot improve this game unless you play against good pitching, play against better pitching, infield. But it's just incredible how much money's being made. And I don't, everyone could make money, but it's off the charts.
Yeah.
Down here in Sarasota, there's parents. One parent told me the other day he paid $10,000 last year for his kid.
Yep.
The kid's not that good a player. He's better off. No, he's better off not. They weren't truthful to him. That's the point.
That's true. It's true.
And that's a shame. That's a shame. But the academies, like the Kansas City Royals, I think it was genius. I know a lot about it, and I even have the format of how it started because Sid Thrift and Jim Thrift, who is a friend of ours, has the plan, and it's right down the street from where I live. And the reason it was good, because they were taking athletes and training athletes. I think the concept was great. It was undermined by a lot of the scouting department and player development department. Why? Because they thought that the academy was going to take jobs away from the scouting department or player development. So it was, we got to get rid of this department. But it was they got like for the amount of money they put in, they got players out of it. But I think that's a perfect for that is actually the design we're using for the development of baseball in Haiti, is to have a central location where the players come there, live there, eat there, psychological test them, teach them the English language. But I think the concept is solid. It's good, but you have to have good coaches.
Yeah.
You can't have guys that don't know what they're doing. You got to have good. It's like anything else. Why is Jeff a good school? Yeah, good teachers, good professors. That's why you pay good money to go there.
Yeah.
You could go to another school. If you're not going to get good professors, why send the kid?
Yeah.
It's the same concept, but I like that. I like that concept.
Yeah.
But it has to be done properly.
All right. So we're running kind of short on time now. So I got a couple more real quick. So how would players of an older era fare in today's game?
Well, I asked that's a good question. I don't know if I have any answer. I was asking a friend of mine the other day, I said, would Pete Rose be signed today?
Yeah.
He came down because I happened to be on the team. I happened to be with the Reds at that time. He came down. I don't know if anyone knows this or guys out there. He was from Cincinnati. He came down on a tryout basis. He signed for $500. Yeah. And he holds one of the greatest records I've ever, no one will ever break this record.
No.
And that was in the Florida State League. Pete Rose had 33 triples in one season.
Jeez.
And that's incredible. But he had that internal makeup.
Yeah.
Nobody was tougher than Pete Rose, except his father. His father was tougher.
Yeah.
And the fact is that a lot of these kids may not get a chance. Now, if you're throwing 90 miles an hour, I have guys say, well, he's not college. Some of these college coaches, I've seen some kids really be able to throw. Well, he's not throwing 95. Well, first of all, I'm not buying into the guns either, because I think a lot of the guns are calculated high. Yeah. I know that. I batted against Nolan Ryan, and I'm going to tell you, when they say 103, Nolan Ryan threw 103. Some of these guys, I'm not sure, are throwing 100. But you know what? They're throwing hard. More the guys are bigger and stronger. Yeah. But you know what? The game is a vertical game. It's up and down. And pitching, you don't see as much inside outside because you get guys out four ways at the major league level: inside, outside, in corner, out corner, up and down, change ups, forward and back, and diagonals. And I see the up and down, but I don't see the corners inside and outside with the break and stuff and moving guys back and forth. I think guys like Gibson and those guys, they'd win anywhere, and the great hitters, you got to be able to use the whole field, and you got to be able to use all parts of the zones. But I think they could be successful, the old timers, no question. The question is, would they get a chance?
Right.
Because of the analytic numbers.
There you go. You threw that in there. I like it. Yeah. All right. Who's your current favorite player and why?
Oh, that's a good question. Jeez. Oh my God.
We stumped you. We stumped you after an hour.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think. I don't see a lot and down here you see Tampa Bay. I don't see a lot of the National League as much as I should. Who do you like? Let me throw it back. I'll throw it back.
No, this is all you. This is with Al. I'm not Pat.
I go to the professor. I go back to the professor.
Yeah. So, all right. So we'll move on. We'll move on. What about, do you think the National League will adopt the designated hitter?
Yeah, I think they will. I think they will because I think baseball is going to have Major League Baseball are considering right now to cut the major league, minor league affiliates down to 4 teams each. They're all looking to cut costs, which I think is stupid. And I'll tell you why I think it's stupid. I think many years ago, before I went to college, I graduated Bartram High School in January. Remember, back then we used to have midterm graduations. So before I went to school in September, what was I going to do? So I got a job. I sold full of brushes from door to door. And I remember the supervisor told me, he said, I don't know if you're a good salesman or a lousy salesman. I don't know what. He said, all I can tell you, we got a great product. And number 2 is you're going to sell 10% of your product. So if you hustle and you go to 100 houses a day, you're going to sell 10. If you're lazy and you go to 10, you're going to sell 1. That's the way I look. And that's the way I base my development with my scouts. And that is, I think anytime you cut your sample size of players, this is why the Dodgers are outstanding. When Branch Rickey took over, he had 20 on the Dodgers years and years ago. I'm talking about way back. He had 26 minor league teams. What did he really do? He had more players playing in the organization. So all of a sudden, that's when they got Snyder and Ferrillo and Jackie Robinson and the whole. They had so many players. They were selling Clemente. That's how Clemente went to Pittsburgh. They didn't have room for him. So I think the sample size, but now they're trying to cut costs. But the question is, and this is what I learned in our class at Philadelphia Textile. I'll never forget this. It was called, from Mr. Bokum, opportunity cost. How much money is it costing you now? So if you don't have somebody, it may cost you a couple bucks more to have more minor league teams. But I once asked Jerry Reinsdorf, the owner of the White Sox, if I get a player to the big leagues for you a year earlier than expected, how much does that mean to you money-wise? He said it's $1 million to $2 million. Okay, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I think the more you look at it from that point of view, the more players you have, you can trade them, you can make better decisions. And I think I tell you, I think the group at Dodgers, I think which is of course from Tampa Bay too, Friedman, done a hell of a job. I mean, he understands opportunity cost. So my feeling is you get as many players, the more you cut your sample size, the more, if you cut your sample size as students coming to Jefferson University, you know what? You're going to accept lesser students. If you get more and more people, you become more selective. Got a better chance. And that's mine. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But I've seen success based on those numbers, like opportunity cost. Don't cut it. If they're good. Now, you just don't sign people out of just to sign guys. I'm talking about quality stuff now. Criteria. You must have a criteria.
I think this will be the last question, but what do you think Major League Baseball has to do to increase the fanfare? Like get more people watching, more people going to games, more like back in it, it's kind of shifted where now it's like football, basketball, baseball's way down here. What does Major League Baseball have to do to get
great
back
question.
In that
and they're wrestling with that. They got guys much smarter than I wrestling that question right now. This is why you could say all you want about George Steinbrenner.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tell you about Steinbrenner. Steinbrenner was a very serious businessman. Steinbrenner was one of the few owners that understood something, and he understood that he wasn't competing against the Mets. The Mets always competed against the Yankees. What did they do over there across the bridge? What did they do up there? Steinbrenner never cared what the Mets did. What his competition was Broadway, the Broadway dollar, restaurant dollars going in. How do I get those people into Yankee Stadium? That's why he spent a lot of money on free agents. People want to see stars. They want to see the best, the creme de la creme. That's where he understood that. So I think, number one, baseball has lost. And next year, I don't know how many games they're going to play, 100. They're planning to play 120 games. I don't know what they're doing. But the fact is, I noticed this. There's more games, and I looked at fans at the stadiums. They're falling asleep. They're on their iPhones. Fifth innings, fourth inning. It's boring. Why? The guys are striking out more. They're going back to the dugout. Is that entertaining for your kids? No. Are they looking? It's not entertaining. Runs, guy. Actually, the World Series when they were stalled, like when Tampa Bay and they stalled home. and that was an exciting game. I mean,
Yeah.
that's an important factor. You got to bring those fans. And another thing is that other sports, soccer's growing, lacrosse is growing, all these other, and you got to start at the infancy level. And I think Major League Baseball got to do more programs for the community, in Philadelphia, in Delaware County. You've got to get the kids playing. It may cost you. You got to do that, and you got to be aggressive, proactive in these things. They're suffering, and Major League Baseball is going to suffer for it. They are. They're going to see it next year. You'll see. Unfortunately, there's a lot of things they have to do, and they're talking about it. But you need more kids. You got to work on the inner city programs. Get some of the great athletes that were coming in from the inner city. It's very tough to play baseball. How much does a glove cost? How much does a bat cost?
Too
How
expensive.
And you have $500 right there. I mean, how many families could afford that? And where are the fields? Where are the fields to play?
Yeah.
Are they playing stickball anymore? Are they playing half ball, or what we used to play in the schoolyards? So those are things that made the game fun, So you have to think innovatively. You need a creative guy to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things I did a video, and it was about when you're watching TV, it's like really long commercial breaks. It's like they need to kind of shrink that, because when a commercial comes on, it's easy to change the channel, and then you might not be coming back.
That's right. Well, we did something with the White Sox. I figured this out. We had a rule, a standard. I'd say one of the things, remember I said you had to run the ball out hard?
Yeah.
Well, in between innings, we had a standard with the White Sox that you had 1 minute and 10 seconds to be off the field, and the hitter leading off had to be walking towards home plate within a minute. So the average time is 2.5 to 3 minutes between innings. So that's 3 or 4 an inning.
Right.
Okay. So times 9 innings, that's 36 minutes. So if you get guys hustling, first of all, less errors will be made. The longer the time, that's why guys start walking guys, more errors are made. It gets boring out there. You lose your focus. So you got to get the guys running balls. You got to do all this stuff to get the guys hustling, where the fan is engaged in the game, and teach them the game. What are the intricacies? Why is this guy going to move a runner? What's his leads like? You've got to educate the fan of what is a good base runner, what is a good outfielder. I'm not sure they know.
Thank you so much, Mr. Goldis. This was really, really an interesting look into baseball. Thank you, Coach. Yep. I know that we weren't able to get to everyone's questions this evening, but we will share them with Mr. Goldis and hopefully get you some replies very soon. And thank you once for participating this evening. And we want to encourage you to join us for some of our other upcoming alumni events. You can find them at jefferson.edu/alumni events, including Rams Rise Up, which will be this Thursday. It's our 24-hour campaign to support student athletes and our teams at Jefferson. So you'll see more information coming this week on that. And you can also visit jeffersonrams.com/Rams Rise Up for more information. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Thank you, Al. Thank you, Coach.
And thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yep. Thanks, Al. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.